Hello, everybody, and once again, we are going live to talk about user experience design and how it can positively contribute to your SEO, but also conversions, the ultimate goals that you have by having a website in the first place. And so this week, we are going over my friend Mandie's website, and I met Mandie online. She has an awesome podcast called the Bold Moves Podcast. And so she interviewed me. I'll try to dig up that link and add it in later. But today we're going to go over her website. Mandie actually has a lot of things going on. She's a professional makeup artist. She's a professional model. And she's like a full-time hustler. So her website has to be able to adequately communicate all these different parts of her professional life. I'm going to get the dog down from the table right now. Really quick. Lola, come on. Don't pull that crap. Anyway, so Mandie has mentioned to me prior to going through this website that she is looking to rebrand and looking to redesign her website. So I'm going to try to focus this on making sure that I speak to, what's working really well for her and what she might want to reposition as part of this redesign. So without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and switch to the screen view. And for some reason, it's not letting me show you the top part. So I might just adjust the window here. Let me see. I'm trying to figure out why it won't just let me show you the full website, because there's a top bar part that you can't see. Alright, I think I'm gonna have to figure that out next time. Let me just look at one more thing here. Maybe that's it. Okay, cool. Alright, so Mandie has this great website where she's talking about all the different things that she does, and I was actually looking on her Facebook page prior to this because she's been talking about her rebranding and people giving her ideas for how to do it. And one thing that I like but I think could be improved is Mandie's logo. It doesn't say a whole lot about her brand. It's cute. It's this purple lipstick print right here with Mandie and her website under it. But I would say that, it probably doesn't need to have the URL of the website there. Most logos, you don't expect to see that. Really, you want the logo to kind of speak for itself. And sometimes a logo can be kind of, it might not tell the whole story, but it becomes this recognizable part of the rest of your brand. And, I think it needs to speak more to the types of services that she provides and her expertise, and she just needs to find a way to start with the brand and kind of build from there. So one thing you'll notice when going through Mandie's website is there's a lot of purple, both with that logo and, kind of these call-out headings, and even in this pop-up email thing here, which again, it's looking like I can't show you the whole thing. Maybe now you can see it. And so that's great. She's pretty true to her brand in terms of her color choices and things like that. But one thing I noticed here is with the links themselves, off of this top menu bar, is that the colors it's really hard to read the purple on the black. So you have to always be conscious of this color contrast in whatever elements you use, whether they're, the body content, the menu, your sidebar. And for the most part, her website is pretty easy to read. It's really just that menu part that is difficult to read. And we can also take a look and see kind of how that scales on mobile here. And I imagine this color scheme works a lot better where it's this white or off-white on purple. So maybe the changes as easy as just switching the mobile colors to being also the desktop colors that show up. So I love, one of Mandie's strengths, I would say, is that she's really good at just showing people who she is and, aligning her brand with her as a person. And I love these images and, also the alliteration behind them: muscles, makeup, meals, motivation. I think she does a really good job right in the header right here of being, pretty forward about what it is that she does. It's easy to tell. Although, you know, it probably would also make sense because this is her homepage that we're still on, and the homepage being one of the most valuable real estate pages of your whole website, to kind of go into that a little bit more. I don't think she has to get rid of this, but I don't know if it has to be in the header. I would maybe move this down so it's kind of like where this read my article on Huffington Post and Apple News piece is right here, which is a slider. And as you probably know if you've seen my Facebook Lives before, sliders are kind of a gray area thing in terms of usability. Some people say, oh, they're too distracting, you know, they present too many options. I think that they can work when they're used really well, but, and especially because Mandie publishes a lot of content, it might be a good fit for her website, but I struggle with this being the first thing on the homepage because we still have to get to the point of what it is that she does and what services she offers and, you know, how she benefits her people. So again, I would move this down and maybe expand and have maybe a sentence or two for each thing, you know, what specifically she offers in terms of these things, and then having like a link under each one that also says learn more, you know, shop now, get in touch, whatever would be relevant to each one, because some of these are more like productized things, while I think others of them are more like coaching, you know, where it's like one-on-one. And so obviously the language of whatever her calls to action should be should reflect the nature of what she is calling to action. So I will say that I do love that her email pop-up is a non-obtrusive one. So, you know, usually you're used to seeing something that kind of takes up the whole page, or, you know, it pops up and you can't actually access the content until you X out of it. And so Mandie has it 100% right in that she has her email pop-up where it's kind of like in the corner here. You can still scroll, you can still view the site. It entices you to act, but it doesn't force you to act. One thing that I would say is it looks like a block of text just by, you know, putting your eyes on it and not actually reading it. I would draw some emphasis, Mandie, to your lead magnet here, 22 makeup kit must-haves and my Success Live takeaways. I would also maybe describe what the Success Live takeaway deal is a little bit more for somebody who's not familiar with your brand, because again, the point of these like email conversion things are to build that relationship oftentimes from that first point of contact. So, you know, add some bold here, maybe make the font a little bit bigger, add a little bit more description as to what it is that you're offering here, and then I think that you're on the right track with that. So another thing that maybe needs a little bit more emphasis, I would love to see in general the menu just have, you know, maybe this is because I'm all the way like zoomed out, but even so, I would love to see the menu having a larger font size just so it's a little bit easier for people to read. I would go ahead and assume that probably most of your audience is more of like the millennial, like, you know, young adult sort of audience, and so we don't have to squint so much to see these things. But even so, accessibility is always a good focus for web design in general. And also, I think that by making a bigger menu in general, also you want to make these social icons a little bit bigger, because I think that a big part of your brand is connecting with people. And, it seems like you're pretty active on social media, so we want to draw attention to those things. Also, this search button thing here is almost an afterthought because I can't really see it. So again, that's where contrast is your best friend. Instead of having it like a blend-in purple sort of thing, make sure that it's white, off-white, or something else that contrasts better with this purple background. I might also recommend that you limit your social media icons to the ones that are kind of the most important and where you're most active. You could list the rest of them on like your about page or something like that, but right now it kind of seems like overwhelm, to try to decide where it is that I want to follow you. So you might want to just, be proactive and say, I'm most active on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, whatever it is, and say, okay, follow me there. So adding that call to action to follow you, I think, could also be really useful. All right. I am not a fan of a sidebar on a home page. That's perhaps the only page I would definitely say get rid of it. Only because, again, it's just like kind of distracting from the main point. I get that you have a media website, you have a lot of great content, you have this great podcast, you regularly blog, and so content is clearly a huge part of what you do, but I think there's a better way to display it that doesn't involve all the distractions of this sidebar, at least on the homepage. I think that something like this is perfect for like individual blog post pages. People will argue with me on that as to if you should have a sidebar or not, because it ultimately is a bit of a distraction. But I think something like this is great for people who are reading your content, because then they can see all the other stuff you do. So you also have a bunch of different ways to subscribe to the podcast. And I'm wondering again if like the power of choice, the overwhelming nature of choice is getting in your way here, because I would probably limit it to like, subscribe on Apple, subscribe on Stitcher, and then maybe have like a link that says view other options, because you just don't want to overwhelm people at the end of the day. And you also don't want to have too much clutter. Because that's the sense I'm getting from the homepage right now, is that you're just trying to kind of speak to everything you're doing with an emphasis on what you're doing most recently, just based on the way that the news is displayed. But we also have to get to the root of what you do on the homepage so that people can understand right away what you're all about, if they're in the right place, if they are a relevant follower for you, and then where they can learn more. And so maybe the focus should be more on, featured posts, most popular posts, hand selecting them, maybe having a few that are more, new in nature, setting it up that way instead of having it so that it's, every category on your blog and having like 3 or 4 posts for each one. I think ultimately that's doing you a disservice. Again, overwhelm, clutter, and too many choices. So limit choices for people, and it tends to work out better. It's easier to track your effectiveness, and it's easier to experiment. All right, so now we're looking at the footer here, and the footer also has some contrast issues. This black text on purple is really hard to read. Like this button kind of looks weird, I think because it's probably bordered by black, and so that's just like disappearing into the purple. And also, I don't know that you want to have these lines visible. Usually it looks a little bit better if it's more seamless. These are kind of lines that are like for the designer to be able to see where everything is supposed to be. But I would get rid of that in your redesign. Just make it more of a smooth appearance, at least on the front end here. And also, don't forget to update your copyright here. It's an easy trick that we all fall into. There are ways that you can make it change dynamically as the years change. If you would, bust into the WordPress code or get a developer to do it, that makes it easier than having to like hand update it all the time. So, okay, I think I've said a lot about the home page. This is interesting. It doesn't look like I can click on some of those things. Or maybe I can, but it's like the mouse isn't, it isn't like changing into a clickable mouse. So see, like on contact here, I have that little glove hand, but on portfolios, it's like, it looks like I'm trying to highlight the text. Yeah, I don't know if that's working. So that's another thing that you'll want to look at. Making sure your footer navigation is working properly. But I wanted to look at the About page next. So Mandie has a nice bio here, so you can get to know her. And, I think she does a good job of introducing people to what she's all about. And it's also, I think that the About page is a good place where you could share, some of like your best blog posts. I don't know if these are dynamically generated or if you pick them. I would suggest picking them so that you can show off your best side, maybe one post from each category, your most popular podcast posts, And that's fine. Also, you have these social share images, but there's really no context. So maybe you want to say something like, share this on social or spread the word or something like that, just, again, to give it context, really. One thing I always tell people about the About page is ultimately it's not about you. So people come here because they do want to learn more about you. They want to get the gist of who it is that they would be working with, whether it is just as a listener to Mandie's podcast or as maybe like a coaching client or purchasing her makeup course, for example. So one thing that I would say here is you just need to speak a little bit more to that reader, to that visitor, whether they are somebody who's going to buy from you eventually or not. You kind of want to reinforce on the About page that they're in the right place, just as you would on the home page, just in slightly different ways. Let's see here. So you do a good job of, you talk about some of your like products and some of the things that you do and all that good stuff. And so that was going to be my next suggestion, is to just make sure that you're talking about relevant services and making sure that people know that they exist. So I think that, you're doing a great job there. One thing I might add here as well is a contact form for people to get in touch, because there's obviously a lot of different things that you do, a lot of different reasons why people would want to get in touch with you. So make it easy for them. Don't make them go to another page, basically. All right, so it's interesting because Mandie has a couple different items under her drop-down menu, and this one especially struck me, this About the Site page. And I am the type of person who thinks that, navigation, where people are supposed to go on your website, it should kind of speak for itself. Really use that homepage to define what the website's all about, where people can go for certain things. But having a page dedicated to explaining, what each sort of like major area is all about, to me, that's a usability issue because it shouldn't need explaining. So, Mandie, I would challenge you to repurpose this page somehow, perhaps combining it with the home page. I like the idea behind it. I just don't like the execution of it. So hopefully that makes sense. Let's see what else we can do here. Let's look at the makeup artistry portfolio page, mostly out of curiosity. All right, my dog's going crazy in the background. Should have put her in the other room, but that's what I get for taking a chance. So this might be an interesting thing to comment on. Sometimes when people create websites for themselves or portfolios for themselves, they talk in the third person. So like Mandie here is talking in third person. She is currently located in Los Angeles. I don't know how I feel about that, to be honest with you, because I speak in third person about myself too, on different profiles or different pages on my website. And so, the question is really, I guess, what are you most comfortable with? So I'm not going to call that out as like a usability issue or not, but just something to think about and to make sure that you're consistent with it across your different channels. So let's look at the contact form, just because contact forms are simple, but, every once in a while there's something that you can do to make them better. So so this page, the major issue I see here is that we have a comment form that's active on it, where it's not really a page where comments need to be. So that's a common problem I see, and it's something that I've dealt with too on my own website. I'm going to take away your toy. Well, you have to go get a new toy. All right. No, she just grabbed it back. Okay. So you have to kind of do an audit of your pages that aren't blog posts and make sure that contact form isn't showing up accidentally where it shouldn't be, just because it confuses people and it kind of takes the attention away from the main point of whatever it is you're doing. So this is fairly easy to do on WordPress, just depending on your theme and any sort of like weird conflicts that might get in the way. But if you go to like the top right-hand corner, there's a little button that says screen options when you're in individual pages. And on screen options, you can check the box for comments. And I think you can do that in the quick editor as well. So if you have WordPress, that's an easy way to manually turn off comments for certain pages. One thing I'd like to see on Mandie's contact form here is a subject line so that people can kind of get straight to the point of what they want to get in touch about. And because she obviously has so many different things that she does, it might make sense to help people out by providing a drop-down menu. You know, is this about makeup-related stuff? Is this about being a podcast guest? Is this about being a sponsor? You know, whatever. Make it easy so that you can tell at a glance when you get these contact form submissions, you know, the level of importance of who you need to be responding to right away, and then, you know, who you can kind of respond to in your own time. So it's really more for you than it is for them. I'm just going to let her have her toy because she won't leave me alone. But anyway, so, you know, there's obviously tons of other pages on Mandie's website that I could go through. She's got a lot of great content, you know, and I think it's just a matter of positioning them the best way that she can without confusing people, because she obviously has a lot of stuff going on. So with your redesign, Mandie, I would just recommend making it as easy as possible to navigate people in the right direction for any visit that they're on, you know, to make it easy for them to find the page that they need to be on. So with that, I'm going to draw this to a close, and tune in next week, same time, same place.